Hello and welcome to another episode of Biddle Live. Thanks for joining me. Today I want to answer or address a question that I get in different forms fairly frequently actually. And that is, why do I harangue people about religion? Or sometimes it's put, why do I beat up on religion so much? Why am I so critical of religion? And then it's sometimes elaborated, why not, as long as religionists are not pushing their religion on you or, forcing you to accept their God's views, why not just let them be and, live and let live? And this is a good question. I want to focus on specifically the answer to why I am very critical of religion, and I've written a lot extremely critical of religion. And I always, in my writing and in my speaking, when I do criticize religion, I always give my reasons then for doing it. So it's not like I beat up on it and don't ever explain why I'm being critical of it. And words like harangue and beat up are a little bit inaccurate anyway, because I'm not being a bully or beating up on religion in any sense, because what I'm doing is explaining why I think it's genuinely problematic, why I think it's detrimental to human life. And if religion is detrimental to human life, then it is something that should be criticized. So even though I do give my reasons when I am critical of religion, I want to focus today, we'll sort of go to the meta level. So instead of focusing specifically on what's wrong with religion, although that will be part of the talk, we'll focus on why it's really important to be critical of religion, and I'll give my reasons for my being critical. The first thing I want to note is that to take ideas seriously entails taking seriously the means by which people form and validate ideas. So whether they form and validate them correctly or incorrectly, if you take ideas seriously, you want to pay attention to this. Where do people get their ideas? How do we determine which ideas are true and which are false? And this is really important because people act, well, they think and they act in terms of the ideas that they accept as true. So if someone believes something to be true, say that God commands him to ensure that others follow his religion, and if he believes that sincerely, then he's going to act on that belief. If a person believes that God exists and that God's word is the moral law and that God says he is his brother's keeper, then the person is going to act on that belief. So ideas are really important, and the source and validation of ideas is really important. So anyone who's concerned with ideas has to take all of this seriously. And with that in mind, we want to turn to what religion is. What is the nature of this thing? And what are the implications of acceptance of religious ideas on the personal level, on the social level, and on the political level? These are all very important aspects of human life. And if religion has significant impact on these things, then that's worthy of addressing. And if that impact is negative, then it's worthy of criticism. So let's start with what religion is. Now, by religion in this context, I'm talking about the religions, basically the three major monotheistic religions. So Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And what is the essence of these religions? What is it that makes them a religion as against, say, a philosophy? Well, religion is a kind of philosophy. It's a specific kind of philosophy, namely the philosophy that holds faith as a means of knowledge. And this is true of all three of the major monotheistic religions. They hold that you can know, and you do know, the most important truths about human life by means of faith, by means of accepting the ideas in the absence of any evidence in support of these ideas. And that's key to the definition of faith, because the very purpose of the concept of faith is to differentiate from reason. If you accept ideas on the basis of reason, then you're accepting them on the basis of evidence and logic. When you accept ideas on the basis of faith, you're basically saying, look, there is no evidence in support of these ideas, so we accept them on faith in the absence of evidence, in the absence of logic, and sometimes even in defiance of evidence and logic. So that's what this concept means, faith. And this is the fundamental, this is the epistemological fundamental, the centerpiece of religion. It's the idea that you can acquire knowledge, and in fact we do as human beings acquire the most important knowledge, such as knowledge of good and bad, right and wrong, and how we should and shouldn't act. So moral knowledge comes from faith. And if you say, well, no, it comes from the Bible. We get our ideas of good and bad from, say, the Ten Commandments. All right, but the Bible is a book. Why would you say the Ten Commandments are your moral code rather than some Ray Bradbury book or whatever? So even there, you're saying, well, we have faith that the Bible is the Word of God. So ultimately, it comes down to faith regardless. That's the essence of religion. Well, if you're going to accept ideas on the basis of faith, if you're going to say faith is a means of knowledge, then to take ideas seriously means to take that idea seriously. Either faith is a means of knowledge or it's not. If faith is a means of knowledge, then if someone has faith that something is true, then by definition, it's true. So if you have faith that you are your brother's keeper, then that is true. It's true because you have faith. If you have faith that homosexuality is a sin, then that's true. If you have faith that homosexuals should be killed for committing that sin, then on the premise that faith is a means of knowledge, that is true. If you have faith that everyone must submit to Allah or die, then if faith is a means of knowledge, that is true. And there are implications all over the place for this idea, and they're not just existential. Some of them are psychological. So focus on sex for a bit. The idea that sex is sinful except for when it is for procreation. Right? This is a religious idea. Several religions uphold this idea. And what does that do to people who have a natural desire to engage in sex with someone they love? What happens to a homosexual who is raised in a religious family to believe that homosexuality is immoral? Think of the psychological implications on this person who accepts this idea because it was spoon-fed to him from Sunday school up. So there are existential consequences here. People flying passenger jets into skyscrapers full of people because Allah said so. And there are psychological implications, acceptance of the notion that sex is sinful except when it's for procreation and the like. And everything in between. So there are real consequences to these ideas of religion, and the essence of all of them is this notion that faith is a means of knowledge. So when I'm critical of religion, I'm being critical of it because of its real-world implications, and because it just doesn't make sense to accept ideas on the basis of no evidence. Think about what it means for an idea to make sense. It means for the idea to make it to the sensory level. Right? It means for there to be evidence in support of the idea. That's what it means for an idea to make sense. Accepting ideas on the basis of faith makes no sense, and it's detrimental to human life in myriad ways. And we can see this. This isn't just hypothesis. We can see this throughout history. We can see it throughout recent history. We can see it in our daily lives. And let's focus actually just for a moment here on something that's not so dramatic as people flying jets into skyscrapers or a homosexual being thrown off a roof or even the psychological consequences of somebody sort of cowering and thinking, oh my goodness, I must be evil because I have feelings for this person. Look at what faith does to the economy. A huge number of people in the West, and in America in particular, hold the idea that we are our brother's keeper. Where does this idea come from? Is there any evidence in support of this idea? None. This idea comes from the Bible. It is embraced by many people. There is zero evidence to support it. And what it does is it creates a political system and thus a socioeconomic system in which our government redistributes massive amounts of wealth on a regular basis from the people who produced that wealth to people who did not. Why? Because we are our brother's keepers, allegedly. So here we have this idea that is based on nothing but faith. And how do we know it's based on nothing but faith? Because where's the evidence to support the idea as true? There isn't a shred of evidence in support of this. It's just an idea that came from a book and that people accept because faith, because you're supposed to just believe this. Imagine what our economy would look like if the government didn't redistribute wealth by force all the time. Imagine what would happen if the producers could actually reinvest their wealth as they see fit to create more new technologies, more new ideas, more new jobs, bigger and better everything. Everybody would be better off. So there's so much that we don't see that would be the case if people did not accept faith as a means of knowledge, that it's kind of hard to understand just, at first glance, how detrimental faith is. But it really is destructive. It's destructive on the existential level. People get killed because of it all the time. It's destructive on the economic level. Our economy is nowhere near as robust and full of the life-serving values that it would be if people didn't accept the idea that you are your brother's keeper. And it's destructive on the psychological level in multiple ways. So why do I criticize religion so much, even though the people I'm criticizing, or the idea that I'm criticizing, might not always be being shoved down my throat? And the answer is because religion really does negatively affect everything good in the world. It just does. Now, this does not mean that everybody who embraces religion is evil, but it does mean that to the extent that people embrace the idea that it's okay to accept ideas in the absence of any evidence in support of those ideas, they are embracing an evil idea. Faith is evil. It's evil in the sense that it is anti-life. It is contrary to the requirements of human life to accept ideas in the absence of any evidence in support of those ideas. And this may be controversial, but it shouldn't be controversial, because we look back through history, we see all over the place that it's exactly what caused huge numbers of problems. Now, fortunately, very few people in the West today, very few Jews, Christians, and even Muslims in the West take their religion seriously. And thank goodness they don't. It's a good thing that they don't. But it's not good enough that they don't. And here's why. To take religion, to pay lip service even to religion, to go to to church and send your kids to Sunday school, and to pay lip service to the idea that faith is a means of knowledge, is to lend credence to every other person and every bad idea on the planet that is born of the notion that faith is a means of knowledge. If you agree that faith is a means of knowledge, you are basically handing the jihadists the idea that whatever you have faith is true, and therefore you should do it. So if you have faith that you should murder everybody unless they believe in Allah, then that's what you should do. And there's no getting away from this fact. If you lend credence to the idea that faith is a means of knowledge, then you're lending credence to everyone who acts on that idea. Now compare that to the idea that reason is our only means of knowledge, which it is. We don't accept things on the basis of reason by just saying, I believe it, therefore it's true, or it's in some book, therefore it's true. No, the idea of reason is that there has to be evidence in support of the idea, or there has to be logical argumentation based on, or logical thinking based on evidence. So whether it's induction or concept formation or whatever, it's got to start with sensory evidence, and you arrive at ideas based on sensory evidence. Again, this gets back to the idea of what does it mean for an idea to make sense. It means it makes it to the sensory level. And if we were to embrace, as a culture, if everybody embraced the idea that reason is our only means of knowledge, think about how different the world would be. We wouldn't have an economy ruled by the notion that we are our brother's keeper and by laws based on that idea. We wouldn't have to spend billions and billions of dollars a year trying to defend ourselves from people who claim that Allah tells them that we should all die because we don't believe in him. we wouldn't have the massive number of people today who have psychological problems based on the idea that they feel like, oh, I must be a bad person because I'm attracted to this person and I'm not yet married to her, or I'm attracted to this person and he's my same sex, or any of those kinds of things. We would live in a much better world with much happier people, with much more productivity. It would be a much more beautiful place. But faith stomps all over this. So the reason, in short, why I am so critical of religion, and again, I don't think it's fair to say that I beat up on religion or that I harangue people about religion. I don't. I speak frankly about the fact, the demonstrable fact, that religion is completely detrimental to human life. It's a bad idea to accept ideas on faith, and it's bad in multiple ways. So, and those are just some of the reasons. I could go on for another hour about the problems with faith, but this is sufficient, I think, to answer the question. So in short, the reason that I'm so critical of faith is because if faith is a means of knowledge, anything goes, right? You've heard the popular phrase, if there is no God, anything goes. And that's exactly backward. It is exactly backward. The fact is that if faith is a means of knowledge, if just believing something to be true makes it true, that's when anything goes. When is it that only things go if they make sense? If they make it to the sensory level and are supported by logic? When people accept the idea that reason is our only means of knowledge. Let's work toward that. Let's remain critical of religion while being respectful of people who haven't figured this out yet. I'm not saying everybody who embraces religion is evil because of that, but they are definitely confused at the very least. And people who understand this fact should be vocal about it. We should speak up. We should say, hey, look, accepting ideas on faith doesn't make sense, and then give the reasons why it doesn't make sense and point out the facts. The historical facts, the economic facts, the social facts, the psychological facts, all of the facts that we know religion corrupts, all of the values that religion corrupts, I should say. So I hope that helps. I hope that answers the question for those who have asked it, and helps those who get into these same kinds of discussions with people to use some of these ideas in discussing what's wrong with faith and why reason needs to be embraced as an absolute. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you next week, and I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about then. If you have any suggestions for next week's episode or any episode, just drop them in the comments under the thread here, or email them to me at cbiddle@theobjectivestandard.com. Till next time, love your life.